Short king. All right. Muscle cars. I grew up on them, and when I became an adult, I was lucky enough to own some. I'm talking about muscle cars from the 70s, the golden age of American V8 engines. The Hemi, the Boss, the Super Duty, all legendary engines found in some of the most beautiful cars I've ever seen. My favorite muscle car was and still is the 1970 Plymouth Superbird. Longer than a Chevrolet Suburban, it was a two-door modified Roadrunner given a nose cone up front and 3-foot-high wings attached to the trunk. Its aerodynamics were ridiculous. The Superbird and its kissing cousin, the Dodge Daytona, absolutely ruled NASCAR in 1969 and 1970. So much so that the owner of NASCAR, Bill France, basically outlawed winged cars after that. If you've never seen a Superbird, you know that it's the most unmistakable, most memorable car you will ever see. If you haven't seen one, go ahead, do a quick image search for the Plymouth Superbird to see exactly what I'm talking about. Fantastic. I was 12 when I saw my first Superbird in 1971. There was a bar on Telephone Road called the Satellite Lounge, and someone who drove a white Superbird was there pretty much every time we passed by. I didn't know what the car was, but it had the word Plymouth on its rear quarter panels, and I thought it was a fine car. So I called it the Fine Plymouth until I knew better. A quarter century later, I was in a position to afford a fine Plymouth. My wife humored me as I went to Mopar shows around the country. Mopar, of course, means Dodges and Plymouths. Those jealous of Mopar cars' success will tell you that Mopar stands for Move Over, People Are Racing. But don't believe them. First on the agenda was the Mopar Nationals in Pennsylvania. It was there that I first saw an actual Superbird on the road. In fact, I saw several of them being driven to and from the event location. It was all I could do to keep my rent car on the road. I didn't find the car of my dreams there, but a couple months later, 2 Superbirds were listed for sale in a newsletter. One was red and was in Illinois, and the yellow Superbird was right down the road in Alvin. We called the car's owner, but alas, someone from Richard Petty's organization beat us to the punch. So we called the guy in Illinois who agreed to hold the car for us while we drove up to inspect it. It turned out to be glorious. A perfect shade of red, a 446-pack engine, a manual 4-speed transmission with a Hurst pistol grip shifter, and more chrome in the engine compartment than I had ever seen. It took me all of 5 minutes to wire the asking price. I didn't even try to haggle. I had found my dream car, and there was no way I was going to lose it. Even though we trailered the car to Houston, this car was no trailer queen. I bought it to drive, and drive it I did for 10 years. And if you lived in the Clear Lake area, there was a great chance you saw me driving that big, beautiful bird. Even today, almost 20 years after I sold it, people still tell me about seeing that car out on the road. As I said earlier, my wife humored me in this. She did not see the Superbird the way I did until the first time she rode in it. We took the Superbird from our home in Clear Lake to Ellington Field for this air show. On the road, at least a dozen people honked at us and gave us the thumbs up as they passed by. After parking at Ellington Field, I told my wife to turn around and look. She did. And what she saw were 4 people taking pictures of the Superbird and many more gathered around it. She was amazed. She asked, "Does this happen every time I drove the car?" I told her it was. She was hooked on the Superbird as me. One day, we drove to a local barbecue joint for lunch. While we were eating, an older man came to me and asked if the Superbird outside was my car. I said it was, and he congratulated me for actually driving it instead of keeping it locked away. Then he said that because I had bought the car for the right reasons, he wanted to share something with me. There was a guy in Louisiana that had the biggest collection of Mopar muscle cars and parts in history, and he just died. His kids didn't like that stuff, so they had no idea what all those cars and all those original Hemi engines from 1971 still in their crates were worth, and were selling stuff at rock bottom prices. How rock bottom? How about a 1970 Plymouth Cote convertible for $4,000? Or a 1971 Hemi Charger for $5,500? Those cars are worth 50 times that today, but even in 1999, they were worth far more than those prices. The The guy said he made a couple trips a month to Louisiana to buy stuff and would like him to pick anything up for me. I know what you're thinking. Greg, this is too good to be true. But the guy didn't ask for any money up front, so I gave him 3 cars I'd love to have. Total price for all 3 was under 10 grand, which I didn't have to pay until the cars were delivered. I'd be careful, take it step by step, but who knew? Stranger things have happened. The man left a week later pulling an empty car trailer behind his station wagon. A couple days later, he called and said he'd picked up the cars, but the load had caused his transmission to blow. Could I front him $200 for the repairs? There it is. The ask. But he showed up with a Mopar key, telling me it was the key to a 1970 Cote convertible I'd asked for. And it was a real Mopar key from that time, so I bit and gave him $200. I figured there was about 0% chance I'd ever see the guy again, but I figured that $200 wasn't all that much because you never know, right? A few days later, on a Friday afternoon, it was rainy, and the guy called and said he just passed through Beaumont with my car, should be Clear Lake by 5 p.m. I went home and eagerly watched the street, all while thinking there really is a treasure trove of valuable Mopars in Louisiana basically being given away, and I'm going to get some of them. You have to be kidding me. I was being kidded, or so I thought. You see, the guy never did show up, nor did I ever hear from him again. I had his phone number, but I never called him. I chalked it up to experience. But about 10 years later, I checked a few Mopar forums online, and guess what? It turned out the whole story was true. There really was a guy in Louisiana who'd passed away, and his children really did sell a bunch of valuable cars for pennies on the dollar before they finally figured out what they had. This was all verified by multiple car collectors. So what happened to that guy? Did he ever really have my cars? Did the family wise up before he could make my deal? Was there an accident or something tragic that happened to him? I'll never know. But I still have a Mopar key in my desk somewhere, and there just might be a 1970 Cote convertible that it fits. Thank you.